Did you know that running Google Ads and getting ads certified in Google is actually a great way to make money, work from anywhere, and build an absolutely thriving career? Yeah, that's right. Just get your Google Ads certification and start getting clients, and you can make some money. Unbelievable, right? But that's the reality of our industry right now. It's really hard to see that as someone that has been doing Google Ads for 17 years because we're already super commoditized as it is. And so now the fact that people are being sold on the fact that they could just get a Google Ads certification and start running ads for clients and work from anywhere, and it's this dream career, it's just absolutely ludicrous. So if you are coming to my channel because you want to hear about how getting Google Ads certified and learning Google Ads is a great way to work from anywhere, have freedom, be a freelancer, and live the life of your dreams, then this is not the video for you. The algorithm dropped you in the wrong place. So please do not subscribe, leave. You are not going to be happy hearing this. But if you're a business owner and you want to hear or validate why maybe the cheap Google Ads specialist isn't helping you, or why maybe you got the wrong advice on Reddit, or why you see so much Google Ads spammy, thin content everywhere, or perhaps you're a business owner and you feel like you work in a commoditized industry too and you don't know how you can be successful, then this video is for you. Let's go ahead and talk about the realities of being specialized in Google Ads and really, really good at running this platform and paid search. So first of all, the certification, it's just the beginning. Yeah, I think it's great that Google adds a certification. I have chosen not to maintain mine because I don't care at this point. I am not trying to prove anything to anyone at this point in time. I am a top 50 PPCer in the world. I forget my rank. I think I'm like 29th or something. I write for Search Engine Land. I am president of the Paid Search Association. I've worked at major agencies. Like at this point, if you don't know who I am and you haven't Googled me and you don't see that I am extremely, extremely well versed in this industry, then that is not the client for me. So let's begin there. But the reality is that if you do take the Google Ads certification, you're doing it for one of two reasons. One, because your MCC requires a certain number of people to be Google Ads certified to maintain their partner status, which a lot of agencies are dropping that as well. Or you're also taking it just to validate that you can answer a question how Google wants you to answer that question. So again, for me, I choose not to maintain that, but that is what that does. I would say there is another benefit to taking the test, and that is to kind of understand how Google wants you to answer. So you're taking it to sort of get in the head of Google. And that, I think, is a very valid reason to take it. I'm not going to, it's a free test. I'm not going to criticize anyone who takes the time to take it just for curiosity's sake. Not a bad thing. Oh, and by the way, you can Google the answers online, just so you know. Let's talk about when you're actually running a campaign. So you've gotten the job, you're running a campaign for a client. Campaign success takes time. It takes energy. It takes dedication. It takes interpretation of data. It takes critical thinking skills. It takes the ability to explain to a client why something is working, why it may not be working, why they should wait, what they should do, how they should make that decision. That is not an easy job. And it's not an easy job because you're dealing with people's money. You're spending a business's money trying to ultimately get what they need and they desire. And so that's not an easy job. I don't feel like it's something where you can just sit and live your beautiful life and do that, because you do take on that emotional burden for that client. And you do start to really, really care about their success if you're doing it right, by the way, which a lot of people obviously aren't doing it right in this industry. We've talked about that a lot on my channel, but I'm one of us who cares. So that's where we're at. But truth be told, when I was managing full-time client accounts, I was always stressed out. I was really, really invested in that client's success. So it wasn't something that I could just do and turn off at night. I would be taking walks and thinking about problems and thinking about how to approach things. And sometimes I would just sit in the interface and look for that key piece of information that could help me choose what path to move in, what direction, how to go. It's not something that you could turn off because, again, you do care about those clients. And at the end of the day, the competition, once you do get into Google, it's fierce. The CPCs are getting higher and higher. And if they're getting higher and higher, there's more and more pressure. But the auction itself is complicated. You can't just be like mediocre at PPC. In fact, the problem right now with AI is that if you are kind of mediocre at PPC, the AI helps you get a little bit better. Like, I'm going to say a little more mediocre if you're bad. It's just AI is making things better for the people at the bottom, which pushes the people at the top to be even more on top of things. It's not an easy auction. It's not an easy system. While I say all the time on this channel that you can do it yourself, I truly, truly believe that with a little bit of coaching, anyone can run their Google Ads. But that doesn't mean it's easy. It's sort of like I give a workout analogy, right? Just because I can go downstairs and ride my Peloton and work out and lift weights and I have access to all that stuff, it doesn't make it easy. I have to put thought into it. I have to take the time to measure my outcome, what I'm doing, what I'm not, how I feel, how the business is doing. It's all those things. It's not just an off-on switch. You also have Google's changes. Google is constantly changing the platform. And by changing the platform, I mean running internal tests. You all of a sudden have a setting that wasn't there before. How is that going to make an impact on your campaign? You know, what's happening on the outside market? And they're coming still to this day out with new technologies. AI Max is still new. How is that going to work with my clients? Performance Max. How do I have a perfect setup that makes everything work for my client? The DSA changes, the automatic asset changes. All of these changes are things that as an expert, you need to be keeping up with. So for me, when I'm not actively running campaigns for my clients, I would be reading, I would be writing, I'd be putting content out there. I would be contributing to the conversation in the community. I'd be talking about what other people are seeing. It's not just I've been trained to run this platform. I'm not going to read up constantly on what's going on in the outside world. That is not how this worked. It is a true career path where you follow all the news in your industry to make sure that you are keeping current with what is happening so that, frankly, your clients are not vulnerable. I've also talked about this a lot lately, but there is a real need to be a true marketer, not just a paid search person. And it's more and more prevalent as we talk about the need for understanding the full funnel. Yesterday, I went on and talked about how I subscribed to Factor Meals. The triggering event for me subscribing to Factor Meals was because my husband broke my heel. Like them because they're healthy. I am somebody who works out, but it's hard to cook meals. I have a family. There are all these reasons that drove me to this particular brand and this particular product and this solution. But understanding that and taking the time to understand your clients, that's what marketing is about. That engagement strategy, that positioning strategy, that creative strategy, that absolutely everything that goes to taking a product or a service or something to market, that is marketing. That's not just PPC. You notice nothing that I talked about right there was changing bids or whether they were going to choose Meta ads or Instagram ads or Facebook or email or the coupons that they send me in the mail. You know, when I actually go back online to redeem that coupon or if I download their app, it's not talking about all of that. That, again, is marketing as a whole big unit. And so for us as paid search specialists, that is our discipline. That is where we're specialized. That is the tool we know how to operate in. But at the crux and the core, we're marketers. My husband used to tell me that he always felt like it was ridiculous if you had a plumber that maybe didn't know how to do drywall or a plumber that didn't understand tiling and things like that, because at the end of the day, they're fixing the toilet. Yeah, but you need to know the things around your job. You need to be generally handy if that is your specialty. That's really the same thing for Google Ads. You need to understand everything around your industry. I actually was in SEO before I even moved into PPC. Actually, in 2015, when I switched to only PPC, I remember being agonized by that decision because I actually found that I was better at PPC than I was at Google Ads. And to an extent, even to this day, I still bring in so much of the SEO knowledge. And frankly, I've been trained on social too. I remember sitting at Nationwide we had an auditorium at Nationwide. I was sitting in the arena and my friend who was in charge of social at the time said, "Oh, you hadn't heard about Instagram? Like, I'm surprised you didn't join Instagram." Like, this stuff came alive while I was around and I saw these strategies evolve. I have put together full strategic solutions for clients. I've consulted at agencies. I've built proposals that include a full social media strategy. One of my favorite proposals that I put together, it was a small local business that was absolutely dominating in local markets, but they had very, very poor reviews and they wanted to know how to do that. And they came to me for SEO and I had to end up telling them SEO isn't going to get you out of the poor reviews. You actually need a social strategy. You need to take up the first page of search. You need to be present and countering these messages on social media and addressing them head on from a business perspective. So Again, things I've been trained on that don't directly tie into Google Ads and that I'm very, very capable of doing. I just choose to specialize in Google Ads. Now let's talk about just the client side of things, because I've talked about the realities of managing it, all about myself and how I feel and how I take on my clients' problems. But how do I deal with just working one-on-one with clients? Because that is part of this as well. I talked about the stress of clients' goals. And the truth is, when your value as a marketer is directly tied to the client's return and the client's profitability, it is hard to not think about that all day, every day. If campaigns underperform or the business is struggling, they blame paid search first. This leads to stress, churn, and frankly, a constant justification for your fees. Finding and retaining clients is extremely hard, and it's because this industry is so commoditized. It's because business owners aren't necessarily on Google all day searching for paid search problems. They've already, in a lot of cases, outsourced the management to agencies that probably aren't doing a good job because I audit them all the time, or they're getting good enough results that they're happy because when I finally do get my hands on accounts and do audit them, or frankly, when an agency brings me in and audit them, a lot of times what I see is the clients that are losing the most amount of money don't even know that it's happening. Trying to get clients, it's hard because you can't necessarily lead with, I'm so good at PPC, I'm so good at PPC, if it's not necessarily what a client wants to hear. And it's also very thin, expert at PPC. So getting those clients in the door, you really, really have to be putting out a lot of content that helps people. It's not I'm going to retire to a beach and clients are just going to roll in because I'm Google Ads certified. The clients don't roll in, and I have a lot of clout in this industry. So just saying. I still think PPC requires a lot of time. I think managing the campaigns, watching the campaigns, checking in on the campaigns, budget pacing the campaigns, just necessarily staying current and poking around in the interface to make sure nothing's broken, that takes time and energy out of your day. It is not just a set and forget. Even if you're not actively making those bid changes, even if you're actively not going in and changing the targeting because something's not working, the bidding algorithms are already doing that. It still takes time and energy to get in there, log in, check, poke around, make sure things aren't broken, stay current, and all the things that I talked about earlier in this video. There's also challenges in data interpretation. We often say, what we measure on will move. There's different sayings about that. But the truth of the matter is, you have to look at the data and take the time to digest it and take the time to understand what metrics you can control, what metrics you can't control, why the metrics matter. Is it a client where click-through rate does matter? Is it a client where click-through rate does not? Is it a client where impression share matters? Is it a client that impression share doesn't matter as much? These are all highly, highly contextualized thoughts and analysis questions that go through your mind. And then you have to be able to take all of that and take that back to the client to make decisions. These aren't just, I'm going to look at the data, the answer is going to be right there, it's going to be crystal clear. Sometimes it's getting in, thinking about it, contextualizing it, understanding it, and then choosing what the rest of the path looks like. And lastly, at the end of the day, this is a service business. Google Ads is not passive income. It is not get rich fast. I know people don't like to hear it, but you are trading your time for money. That is what a retainer is. In order to get rich in this industry, you have to either be charging extremely high fees, which everyone would run away from those at this point, or you require a top-tier, successful, outcome-based business where everyone's coming to you. And I do think there are a few people like that in the industry, but even they would tell you it's not raining clients on them because I've consulted to a lot of those clients. Also, the other thing is the only way you're going to start to really make money in this industry is if you hire employees and you start to scale in that way. And that's when sometimes you get into issues of quality. Every time you hire someone, you're outsourcing some of your knowledge, and that is not something that you can control as well as when you're doing it yourself as the expert. So my question would be, are you really getting the expert, or are you getting somebody that's been hired by the expert? And that's much different. I think the expert in that case is overseeing, but they're not the actual person doing. So do I think Google Ads is rewarding? Absolutely. I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't rewarding. I think the thing that makes me just jump up and down and get so excited is when I get my hands on an account and I find out exactly what's going on. There's been many, many times, especially now that I've gone out on my own, where I thought I should just throw in the towel. And then what happens is a client reaches out to me and has something that they don't know what's happening. And I look at it and it's one setting that's draining their entire budget. And it's so funny because I saw this post on Reddit the other day. And it was really, really funny because the person said, here are the top 10 mistakes that I see in my Google Ads account. And it had in dashes. It looked like it was written by AI. It looked ridiculous. And all these people went into the comments and said, like, it looks like AI wrote this. It looked like AI wrote this. But then you had the other half of people saying, but it's true. And I thought it was so funny because it was just so clearly AI, but it was also true at the same time. And the moderator even came on and said, oh, we almost deleted it, but then we saw this was getting a lot of traction. In any case, one of the things they were saying is that, it's settings, it's lack of conversion tracking, it's lack of negatives that's really draining the majority of their clients' budgets. And I kind of laughed because I was like, that's true. That's true. And I mean, I'm thinking back to the last couple audits that I did. So I mentioned one audit that I did, and I felt so badly because I charged the client. And when I opened it up, it was one mistake that drained their entire budget. They had thin conversion, and they had checked that they were going to run their ads in the display network and the search network. And it ended up spending all their budget in the display network because I had a very thin conversion. And so it took me literally 2 seconds to solve the entire issue. I felt so badly charging them because it wasn't like I had to dig and find the problem. And I just had this feeling when I delivered that to a client and they were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was huge. We had no idea. I just had this feeling like that is why I'm in this industry. That is why I'm here. I hope my voice is loud enough that I can get through to those types of clients because I genuinely feel bad when that happens. And you would think that that would be the first time that happened. That actually happened the very first audit after I went out independently. And what was interesting is the reaction from, in this case, I was working with the CMO, and he was the one who set up the campaigns. And the reaction from him was kind of like, oh, well, like, it's okay. My Google Ads are working fine enough. And I was very surprised. I thought there would be total shock because this client had spent multiple thousands, whereas the client that I worked with recently had only spent a couple thousand. But at the end of the day, those are the reasons why I am here doing what I am doing. I hope that helped. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Google Ads Strategy Hub. I wasn't planning on making an episode today, but I really, really wanted to address the get rich quick aspect of our business because I see it and it makes me sad. And I hope that businesses don't get taken by this type of thing. I really do, from the bottom of my heart, because I really do care about this industry. I care about doing good. I care about putting good out there, and hopefully you'll see that. So if you want to make a lot of money doing Google Ads, go somewhere else and don't subscribe. Have a good one. Happy optimization.